Hello, hello. On today's video, we're going to talk about import and alias. And they help us solve a problem that is, how do I call a function from a module on another module? How do we do that? So let's go back to the format module that we created inside the helpers folder. Let me go back. I'm going to create a random function here to trim a text. So let's do that. Def trim text do. I'm gonna call a very common function that we use a lot on Elixir called trim from the string module. So string dot trim, and I'm gonna call this on the function parameter that we need to define. So text here. Okay, we're gonna go and call string dot trim on the function parameter. Okay, so let's run this on the terminal to see if this works. IEX-S mix to run the entire application interactively. I'm gonna call the helpers module dot the format module dot the trim text function, and I'm gonna create a string with a bunch of extra spaces like this. If this function works, this should trim the unnecessary white space that we added around the text, and it works. Okay, so how do I call these two modules and this function inside another module? Let's say, for example, that inside my users module, just to make sure my real users doesn't mess up this function call, I'm gonna say that the name is the name calling the trim text function. So how do we do that? To make the code more organized, I'm gonna create a new variable that could be something like formatted underscore name, and the GitHub Copilot here is correct. To call a function from another module, all you need to do is type helpers dot format dot trim text, and then we're gonna call this on the name, and then here I'm gonna create a user based on the formatted name and not the name. So I'm gonna go back to the terminal, I'm gonna recompile. Let's see if this works. I'm gonna call users.new. For the name, I'm gonna pass Daniel with a bunch of extra space, and then age is gonna be 30. Okay, let's see if this works. There you go, this works. So to call a function from another module inside this module, you don't need to do anything. You don't need to use import, you don't need to use alias, you don't need anything. This works out of the box, okay? Now, when do we use import or alias? So I'm gonna start with import. As you can see here, calling the parent method, the parent module here, is a little bit verbose. What if I just want to call the function directly without calling the parent modules? Is it possible? Yes. So here on your def module users, you can say import and then whatever module you want to import all the functions. So I'm gonna type helpers dot format, and here instead of calling helpers dot format, the import is gonna import all the functions from this module. So we can type directly trim text. Let's recompile and see if this works. I'm gonna call the same function. It should still work. And there you go. Pretty neat, right? Now, what if I have like 1,000 functions inside helpers.format? Ideally, you don't do this because this is a code smell. You should have a very few amount of functions defined inside each module. So this is a code smell, don't do this. But just in case you have a lot of functions, is it possible to specify which functions I want to import instead of all of them? And yes, there is. Here you can type comma and then this syntax here, only and then colon, followed by a keyword list where you're gonna type the name of your function, colon, and then the function arity. Now remember, the function is uniquely identified by the parent module, the function name, and the arity. So if I had another trim text function expecting 3 parameters and I wanted to import both, I would do something like this. Trim text 1 and then trim text 2 or 3 and whatever number of arguments the other trim text function is expecting. So if I recompile, this should still work because I didn't change anything. I'm gonna call the same function. There you go. It still works. Okay, now what if I don't want to import the name, the functions? I want to maybe just create an alias for a module, because right now we have one folder and one file. So we have helpers.format. But what if we had like 1,000 nested folders, like helpers.x.y.z, and then calling this module would be very verbose, right? Instead of calling helpers.format 1.format 2.x.z.w, no, I don't want to do any of that. I want to create an alias for that module. How can I do that? Well, instead of calling import to import the functions, you can run alias. Let me do the autocomplete here real quick. Okay, so what happens when I call alias? If I call alias and then the module name here, I am gonna create an alias for the last module. So by using this, I can call the trim text like this, format dot trim text, okay? Now, I can create an alias for whatever name I want. So I could do something like this, as whatever name you want. Okay, this is a good suggestion. And then here, to call the trim text, I can do whatever name you want dot trim text. Okay, and by default, if you don't specify the s parameter here, if you don't specify this here on top, what is going to happen is this. Okay, and then here you can type format. Nice. So if I don't specify the s parameter on the alias, I'm just gonna get the last module as the parent module. So here it's much less verbose, format dot trim text. Now the examples that I give here might sound a little bit unnecessary or a little bit, I know, useless, because I just have one folder and one file. But once you start working on a bigger application, you're gonna have multiple files inside multiple nested folders. So this is very useful. The most common use case that I see is using alias, and we don't pass the s function parameter here. We just use alias, and then we get the last module as the parent module for calling any functions inside helpers.format. And that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. See you next time.